IVM.
Hi, I'm Satyajit.
Hi, I'm Racheta.
Welcome to Paperback by the Open Library Project.
We have as our guest today Niharika Goenka, founder of Arugula and Co. In the first half of the episode, we discuss Salt, Sugar, Fat by Michael Moss and Food Rules by Michael Pollan.
In the second half, we also discuss Thrive by Arianna Huffington and Switch by Chip and Dan Heath. We discuss how making one positive change can lead to a change in lifestyle and how you need to drive change through strong emotions and inculcating healthy eating habits. Happy listening.
The food technicians at Frito-Lay also stopped worrying about inventing new products like topples and instead embraced the industry's most basic and reliable method for getting consumers to buy more food, the line extension. They took their existing snacks and spun them into endless varieties. The classic Lays were joined by salt and vinegar, salt and pepper, and cheddar and sour cream. They put out Fritos in barbecue and chili varieties, and Cheetos, which had nearly twice as much salt as potato chips, were transformed into 21 varieties. These were no run-of-the-mill extensions. The Science Corps at Frito-Lay prided itself on quality invention, putting their all into the taste, crunch, mouthfeel, aroma, and overall appeal of each of these items. The ingredients they used weren't extraordinary. Fat and salt, along with sugar, in some of the brands like Cheetos, as well as starch from potatoes or corn and sundry pieces. The magic comes in the weaving. And to get a better feel for this, I called on Stephen Witherly, the food scientist who had worked on cheese sauces for Nestle. Witherly had written a deeply fascinating guide for food industry insiders entitled Why Humans Like Junk Food. And I brought him 2 shopping bags filled with a variety of chips to taste. He zeroed right in on the Cheetos. This is one of the most marvelously constructed foods on the planet in terms of pure pleasure, he said, ticking off a dozen attributes of Cheetos that make the brain say more. A key one is the puff's uncanny ability to melt in the mouth like chocolate. It's called vanishing calorie density, Witherly said. If something melts down quickly, your brain thinks that there's no calories in it, and like popcorn, you can just keep eating it forever. The only thing more spectacular than Cheetos, he said, was another Frito-Lay creation, the Doritos 3D, a puffy spherical version of the flat chip. The added dimension increases the surprise factor when you take a bite, he said, and surprise is a very good thing for increasing consumption. Even without Robert Lynn, Frito-Lay had a formidable research complex near Dallas where nearly 500 chemists, psychologists, and technicians conducted research that cost up to $30 million a year. Their tools included a $40,000 device that simulated a chewing mouth to test and perfect the chips, discovering things like the perfect breakpoint. People like a chip that snaps with about 4 pounds of pressure per square inch, no more or less. While they worked to hone the product formulas, the company's sales force of 10,000 revolutionized the food industry supply system by carrying handheld computers that tracked shortfalls and ensured that the bags on the store shelves were always fresh.
Thank you, Niharika Goenka. That was an excerpt from the book Salt, Sugar and Fat by Michael Moss. We'll be right back after this to discuss the book in more detail.
Did you know that Parsis in Mumbai, instead of being left at the Tower of Silence after they die, are now cremated? And why? Because a cow fell sick in the early 1990s. Did you know that the smog in Delhi is caused by something that farmers in Punjab do and that there's no way to stop them? Did you know that there wasn't one gas tragedy in Bhopal, but 3? One of them was seen, but 2 were unseen. Did you know that many well-intentioned government policies hurt the people they're supposed to help? Why was demonetization a bad idea? How should GST have been implemented? Why are all our politicians so corrupt when not all of them are bad people? I'm Amit Verma, and in my weekly podcast, The Seen and the Unseen, I take a shot at answering all these questions and many more. I aim to go beyond the seen and show you the unseen effects of public policy and private action. I speak to experts on economics, political philosophy, cognitive neuroscience, and constitutional law so that their insights can blow not only my mind, but also yours. The Seen and the Unseen releases every Monday. So do check out the archives and follow the show at seenunseen.in. You can also subscribe to The Seen and the Unseen on whatever podcast app you happen to prefer.
Welcome to Paperback by the Open Library Project. I am your co-host Satyajit, otherwise known as Onion Knight in most food circles. I am hosting this podcast with my co-founder at the Open Library Project, Racheta Sharma.
Hi guys, my name is Racheta and I'm an ex-banker who gave up my banking profession to follow my passion and run libraries across the world. The Open Library Project is a non-fiction book library service offered to businesses on a subscription basis. We're trying to move away from the run-of-the-mill library concept by setting up rotational and locational curated libraries at co-working spaces, corporates, and business incubators. The idea here is to create value, build a knowledge community, and encourage a growth mindset amongst members.
Today we have with us on the show Niharika Goenka. Niharika is the founder of Arugula and Co, a health food startup that makes salad dressings. She holds a Master of Science in Nutrition from Columbia University and has been featured in Vogue and Sunil Shetty's Mission Fit India in the short 10 months since the launch. When you ask her about food, she usually rants about the failure of food systems in great detail, so we decided to have her on the show so that we could answer the question for other people of why am I not losing weight? Welcome to the show, Niharika.
Thank you, Satyajit. Thanks, Racheta.
It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you reached the stage? What inspired you to get into food and food science in such great detail?
Sure. So, ever since I was a kid, I was a student athlete, always very, very active. And, I was always running against the weighing scale, trying to lose some weight.
Right.
And then at some point, I was studying history, actually. And then I decided that I didn't want to be a lawyer, a politician, or an activist.
Okay.
So I decided to sort of study nutrition, which was the next best thing.
Right.
And once I got there, I realized it couldn't be further from everything that I'd been taught. Weight loss had nothing to do with anything. And I got really fascinated by different things such as sustainability, behavioral nutrition, nutrition education, public health and nutrition. And I wanted to sort of take these concepts and mold them into a scalable solution.
Okay.
That would begin to address some of these issues.
Okay.
So which is why I launched a salad dressing company. And the purpose is very simple. It's to help you eat more vegetables.
Right. So that's the mission of Arugula and Co, is to help you eat more vegetables. And the salad dressings are available in...
So they're in Nature's Basket now. We'll be on Amazon. We're already on Scootsie. Bunch of places, Delhi, Calcutta, Bangalore.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
So coming back to the excerpt that you were reading is from the book Salt, Sugar and Fat, right?
Yeah.
Fascinating book because it kind of touches upon the things that we don't really think about. I think you must be knowing a lot about the details of healthy food. So why don't you tell us a little bit about this book?
Sure. So the book is by an author called Michael Moss.
Right.
And Michael Moss is a New York Times journalist, sort of went undercover into all of these big corporations that make basically anything sold in plastic.
Mm-hmm.
So what he calls is processed foods, right?
Right.
So things that are so fast foods and things sold in plastic.
Right.
And what he sort of realized was that there were three key ingredients that were, contributing to the taste of absolutely anything that we taste, right?
Yeah.
In these foods, which is salt, sugar, and fat.
Right.
And of course, those very three ingredients are also the cause of obesity, right? So, of course, it is centered in America, but one of the most tragic things is that these companies are now marketing to even places in India.
Yeah.
Right.
Things like Oreos, Cheetos, Lay's, all of that stuff. And in India, we're seeing, rates of obesity and diabetes and stuff skyrocket. Yeah. So it's kind of just a behind the scenes look at these sort of big corporations.
So this book talks about, fat and why we almost consume 20 times more fat than we should because we can't really taste it like salt and sugar. Sure. So we don't know the, extent of the consumption that we're doing. So, what is it that, you feel that people should do so that we can cut down on at least fat if not salt and sugar, because that, sort of adds taste to the food.
Sure. So you're actually preempting the next book.
Right. So the next book, we'll just mention the book that we're going to talk about as well, so we can talk about them together. The next book is Food Rules, an Eater's Manual by Michael Pollan. Right. This is a book about how... tell us a little
There are
bit.
about 64 rules.
64 rules to eating, right?
Yeah. So just some background on Michael Pollan as well. He's like my personal hero in terms of actually communicating this vast depth of nutrition. And what he says is really simple. He's like, eat food, not too much, mostly plants.
Right.
And his whole book is divided up into these 3 rules.
Okay.
And they're really simple, straightforward rules for eating, like don't eat anything your grandmother wouldn't eat.
Yeah.
And if a third grader can't pronounce it, don't eat it.
Yeah.
So for example, if you look at the backs of some ingredients, the ingredient list, right? And you'll see things that even I can't pronounce, methyl oxidated antioxidant something. Like that's not food,
right?
And Michael Pollan calls that edible food-like substances.
Okay.
He also says the whiter the bread, the sooner you'll be dead, which is really cool. I really liked that one. Yeah.
He's really, really funny. He's great.
Yeah. So then let's link that back to what we were discussing, which was about fat and healthier options that people can look for.
Sure. So the healthier options are actually to avoid all of this altogether, and that's what Michael Moss. So I'm just going to refer to them now as Moss and Pollan.
Yeah.
Okay.
So so what Moss speaks about by the end of his book, he's like, look, like these corporations, they can't help it.
Yeah.
Like they were not born to feed you food. They are businesses. Their purpose is to make money.
Yeah.
Right.
So and that comes out of some of the most hilarious reactions that these companies have had, that they now try to sell you things like low-fat versions. Right. Or they'll be like, we'll send you 100 calorie packs. But who do you know who actually has a 100 calorie pack? Just one.
Yeah.
Right. They'll sit down and they'll have
need 3-4 of those.
You need 3-4 of those, of course. There's no way you're having just one.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the most hilarious responses has been from Nestle. Now, like I say, it's hilarious because from my perspective, it's hilarious. But actually, there's billions of dollars riding on this stuff, whereas Nestle is now investing in nutraceuticals.
Okay.
So they're trying to crack the DNA of people, and then they're trying to give you nutrition based on that. So first they fatten you up, and then they're like, oh, you've gone too far. No.
Cut down on the fattening stuff that we are feeding you.
Yeah. Oh, no, here's another product.
Okay.
Have this, then you'll become thinner.
Right.
So here's one to fatten you up, and then here's one to thin you down. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
it's like this continuous loop that you're stuck in.
Exactly. So it's not, if you want out of this system, you basically just have to get out.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what Michael Pollan talks about. That he's just like, don't eat food that is packaged in plastic. It's really simple. Like, don't have fast food.
And those are the only foods which are really marketed also.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
it's really unfortunate because you're seeing it and then that's what triggers, the need or the want or whatever.
But the want is driven, the demand is driven a lot by the consumers, right? I think Michael Pollan.
Moss is salt, sugar, fat. Pollan is food rules.
So it's not the food industry's fault that it offers so many bad foods. It's your fault, because as consumers, we kind of we choose to go for the unhealthy versions of our food.
Yeah.
So an example of that is Kraft cheeses, where they have heavy fat cheeses and everything, and they have come out with a healthier version or a non-fat version of their products, but it's just that the demand is not there in the consumers to buy that version of the food. So unfortunately, the foods that have high fat are being sold the most. So kind of like we need to change our mindset if things are really going to change.
In some sense, yes. Right. So we definitely need to change our mindset. So I'm going to make 2 comments on that. So firstly, we can't change our mindset. This is not a question of willpower.
Right.
We are hardwired to want salt, sugar and fat and love it.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there are studies that show that sugar has the same effect on our brains as cocaine does.
Right.
Right. And if you think about it, sugar and fat were both extremely important for us when we were hunter-gatherers, right? Because they were sources of energy.
Right.
And salt is an extremely important mineral.
Absolutely.
The second thing that Moss talks about as well is that we need to start thinking about the food industry sort of like the smoking industry. Now, the smoking industry was highly regulated after a certain point. Now our dads and our moms and, when they were younger, they probably all smoked because it was so normal. And now you can't buy like a cigarette packet without like looking at the front of it and thinking that you're going to die without even smoking it. Right? So food industries need to start doing that, or they need to be regulated. They'll never do it, of course, but they need to be regulated in a similar way. It's the same thing. Would you serve alcohol to a child?
No.
Would you give a cigarette to a child? Would you encourage the eating of cigarettes? Would they be sold so freely? Without adequate health warnings? Probably not.
So more transparency about what you're consuming and the kind of effect that it's going to have on you.
Yeah, essentially.
So, Pollan also mentioned one of the rules was that you can eat all the junk food you want as long as you're cooking it.
Exactly.
And to link that to what Moss said about, earlier, in fact, like our parents' generation, there were cooking lessons which were taught in school, which does not exist anymore. So, and that's really surprising because we talk about equality and we're talking about, equal opportunities. Then this is a skill that everybody should be learning in school. And
agree.
I think if, it's taught in the right way, maybe we'll learn to eat healthier also because we know that we can make multiple things for ourselves. So, you've studied nutrition, and do you feel that, it really helps you make better choices and make more mindful decisions about what you're eating?
Without a doubt. But I think that, again, the biggest misconception is that nutritionists have like this halo on their head and they have all the answers. But actually, I realized that even for myself, after having like studied this for 2-3 years and having read the research and papers and everything, what Michael Pollan says could not be truer. Just eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And it really has to be that simple. Because, and Michael Pollan makes this point as well. He's like, nutritionist is tough, like leave that for the scientists. But eating is easy. And we need to remember that and, try to implement it. And not get obsessed with sort of, like this nutrition, that nutrition, vitamin A, vitamin D, omega-3. Food is not like that. Actually,
and I think all the right foods, especially unprocessed food, has all those components. So you're sort of balancing it out for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a wonderful quote from Michael Pollan that I'd like to read out based on this. So what he says is that I learned that in fact science knows a lot less about nutrition than you would expect. In fact, nutrition science is, to put it charitably, a very young science. It's still trying to figure out exactly what happens in your body when you sip a soda, or what is going on deep in the soul of a carrot to make it so good for you, or why in the world you have so many neurons, brain cells in your stomach, of all places. It's a fascinating subject, and someday the field may provide definitive answers to the nutritional questions that concern us. But as nutritionists themselves will tell you, they're not there yet, not even close. Nutrition science, which after all only got started less than 200 years ago, is today approximately where surgery was in the year 1650. Very promising and very interesting to watch. But are you ready to let them operate on you? I think I'll wait.
Wow, that's a great quote. That really puts it into perspective where we are and how far we can actually go in terms of the science.
Yeah.
And we're like really at a nascent
stage. So it's all hopeful from here, hopefully.
Before we wind up, I had just 2 more questions for you regarding these books. So one was regarding the keto diet, because it talks about consuming a lot of fat. So, what is your thought process on that?
Sure.
And the other thing being, who would you recommend these books to?
Okay, so the first question, I'm going to answer that a little bit differently. So back in the 70s, right, like fat was the big culprit, like no fat.
Yeah.
Today, like carbs are the culprit, no carbs, and like people run away from them as if it's their worst enemy.
Right.
And, but it's the same thing. The keto diet is still living in the year 1650.
Okay.
Right? And, the research...
So we don't really know too much about it yet.
We don't know too much. That's the first thing. The second thing is that also the best diet, as per the research shows, is one that you make small, consistent changes.
Okay.
Right? So it's got nothing to do with food.
Right.
It's got everything to do with behavior.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And like the problem is that the keto diet is focused on food, and it's very, very extreme. And the research also shows that 85 to 95% of all diets are failing.
Right. And they are very extreme.
Yeah, and they're very extreme. So the more extreme your diet, the higher your chances of failure.
So maybe just starting with one rule for yourself, say cutting sugar out, would be a better option than going on a really aggressive diet.
Yeah, or making sure vegetables are 50% of
what you're consuming.
of your plate.
Right.
That's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, so the second question. I would recommend both of these books to anyone who is an eater.
Okay. So everyone.
So
if you eat, you should probably read these books.
Yeah,
and
with the help of these books.
Yeah, but particularly the Michael Pollan book, because it's literally 64 rules. You'll go through that in an hour.
Right.
It's so simple to read.
And quite funny.
Yeah, quite funny and highly intuitive.
Right.
So, so I would recommend the Pollan book a lot more.
Great.
Awesome.
On that note, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back after this.
Hey everybody, welcome to another awesome week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you are not following us on social media, please make sure you do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I know that you guys are making fun of this promo on social media. Please continue to do so. That seems like, as long as you keep listening, I don't care if you make fun of it. I wanted to again just reiterate, we're hiring at the best place in the world to work at. That's the IVM Podcast Network. We're looking for producers, content creators, audio engineers, developers, photographers, business people, all kinds of roles. Go check out our careers page, ivmpodcast.com/careers. We're really happy to announce the second season of Marvel's Lost and Found, which premieres on the 23rd of July. This season, Zen and Avanti cover issues like addiction, mental health in kids, grief, eating disorders, and more. There are a number of special guests that will be on the podcast. Catch new episodes every Tuesday. On Cyrus Says, Supreme Court lawyer and founder of Swayam Pharma Foundation, Harshit Kohli talks to Cyrus about how he got started with Swayam, their objectives, and why people in cities need to take more interest in farming. Also, in case you missed it, check out Cyrus's review of the 2019 World Cup final with comedian Mikhail Almeida on last week's cricket special, Lanso. On the Ronnie Screwvala podcast, Ronnie and I discuss the chapter second innings, where Ronnie updates us about his current ventures and talks about how problem solving is different in a non-profit organization. On the Filter Coffee podcast, Karthik is joined by award-winning journalist and fellow podcaster Amit Verma. They discuss India's performance in the 2019 Cricket World Cup, sports analytics, and poker. On the Empowering series, Zarina is joined by two guests, theatre and TV actor Binaf Dadachanji and Chinese chef and serial entrepreneur Norman Ho. Together, they talk about their 10-year relationship, the importance of commitment and loyalty, and how one should sustain, grow, and evolve in a relationship. On our Kannada podcast, Thale Harate, Pawan talks to researcher Lingaraj Jayaprakash about Buchanan's journey, offering a unique insight in the life and times of the regions he traveled at the dawn of the 19th century. On Geek Fruit, Jishnu is joined by the IVM staffers, Abbas and Alaka, to talk about Stranger Things' latest season. And with that, let's get you on with your show.
Welcome back, guys. We still have with us Niharika Goenka. And the next book we're going to talk about is Thrive by Arianna Huffington. And this platform is really, really, really special to me because, for one, I chose to, sort of go behind or go after, rather, my purpose and not do something which was, monetarily satisfying. And I feel like everything that she has been recommending is absolutely necessary to sort of maintain that work-life balance. And she touches upon really important aspects like well-being and productivity, purpose. And it's really amazing how she started, the Thrive platform. And so I'll just like to give a little bit of context to, why the Thrive platform started. And Arianna Huffington was actually going through a burnout and she fainted, got 5 stitches, was in a really bad state, is when she decided to start Thrive. So I think it really talks about a lot of the harm of burnouts and how we should be managing stress in life. So, would you like to tell us about, why this book is special to you or what stands out for you in the book?
Sure. So I think a lot of different things. So I love how Arianna Huffington firstly talks about wisdom,
right.
And she talks about it as something that's within reach for all of us.
Yeah. In fact, it's inside us.
Yeah, which is a really beautiful thing to see, right? And I think that just generally, like, we live in this, as you said, this toxic culture of burnout.
Yeah.
Right? And everyone around you is like, like when you go out, oh my God, I worked so hard today.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you go out at the end of the week and you're just like, I'm so tired. It's such a long week.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And really, like, she brought my notice back to the fact, and of course, I do these things as well. And she really brought me back to the fact that, hey, listen, everyone has a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, like, don't be extra about it.
Right.
Like,
Right.
relax a little bit. Like, I love the fact that she said that, that you need to start thinking like you have all the time in the world.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And that made me think that, wait, if Arianna Huffington has all the time in the world, I sure as hell do.
Yeah, and she totally emphasizes on sleeping for 8 hours, which
Yeah.
is like, if she can manage it, I'm sure we can manage our schedule around
That
it.
actually changed a lot of things for me as well. Like,
What did
she,
it?
yeah. Like
So you now maintain a routine of like
yeah.
when you sleep
I'm very good.
and wake up on time.
Yeah, I'm very
Okay.
good now about like sleeping like 7 to 7.5 hours,
Okay.
which for me is quite ideal.
Okay. Okay.
And then what she said was so true. She's like, for her, that was a cornerstone habit. So all other habits sort of flowed from it
Okay.
for her.
So it sort of fell into place for her. That is what
Yeah.
she kind of.
Yeah, so she
I think
focused on making that one change.
right, and then
Yeah.
it leads to a whole bunch of positive
Yeah.
changes. Right.
Yeah.
I think this is something that we talk about a lot in terms of discipline. If
Yeah.
you just start your day. I know people don't like to start their day very early in the morning, but if you just start your day earlier,
Yeah.
you have a lot more time to get through your day. That's what a
It's
lot of
like-
books that we've spoken about also have said the same thing.
Right.
And
It's looking
of course,
at sleep as discipline more than just a habit that
Yeah,
you're getting
exactly,
into.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
that, and I think even the fact that she asks you to sort of switch off from technology is
yeah.
something which is so important today, because there are like increasing cases of brain tumor and Parkinson's, all caused by too much use of technology.
And what about things like depression,
oh
anxiety,
my God.
which are
like
Yeah.
our generation of millennials is all of them are on border clinically depressed.
Yeah.
And it's the reason I talk about it is because we are exposed to so much more. There is so much more in and out of media happening
Yeah.
with us through
Social
our phones,
media.
through our screens.
Yeah.
And I in fact, when we talk to people of the elder generation, I'm always telling them that you need to cut the millennials some slack because you don't remember what it was for you to be a
Yeah.
20-year-old, and it
Yeah.
wasn't like it is now.
Yeah.
It's completely different,
Yeah,
So
and we've never had to face this sort of a problem.
Exactly.
Like mindlessly scrolling through Instagram.
and too much information. There's just too much unnecessary information out there.
I think the Thrive Global platform is fantastic. Just the articles that they put out,
They're
and
amazing.
the content of the articles is so inspiring. It kind of shakes your
Yeah.
perspective back into if
Yeah.
you're being a workaholic, or you sort of take things in a new perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's what happened when she had that accident and woke up in a pool of blood.
Right.
Arianna Huffington realized
Yeah.
that there's more to life than just
Burning out and
burning
fainting
out.
and-
Yeah.
And it also, all these habits sort of make you feel better internally, and that's what you reflect then, and that then eventually translates into giving to society, which she says that is the ultimate goal, that it has to go beyond you to add value back to society. But for that, I guess you have to feel healthy yourself and fit to be able to contribute back. So
Ideally, you need to empower yourself first to be in a right state of mind to add value back to actually the ecosystem that you're working in. And so coming to the next book that we are talking about is Switch by Chip and Dan Heath. Right, this book talks about how we can sort of switch our behavioral change to drive it in the right direction. Right.
Basically. So the authors lean heavily on the happiness hypothesis.
Yeah, by
actually.
Jonathan Haidt.
Yeah,
I
by
think we've
Jonathan
spoken
Haidt.
about the happiness hypothesis with Shamal Walabji in one of the earlier episodes of
Right.
Paperback.
Yeah.
A fantastic book.
Fantastic book,
Yeah.
So this book is really interesting because it takes the same metaphor of the rider and the elephant and
Right.
it sort of applies the lens of change to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? And so what the authors actually say is that the rider is your logic and the elephant is sort of your emotion. Now, if the rider is sitting on the elephant and he or she is trying to go somewhere, they're not going to be able to do it for very long if the elephant also does not want to go in the same direction.
Right.
And that's kind of the way that change happens. So the entire book is structured in 3 parts. So the first one is where you have to direct the rider.
Okay.
Right. The second part is where you've got to motivate the elephant. And the third one is sort of where you put them together and you shape a path.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's basically sort of directing your
Subconscious
the rider
mind.
or the mind rather than letting them make the decision.
Yeah.
So basically, to drive behavior, you can use emotions is one of the
You
points.
must.
You must use
Because
emotions.
you won't actually be able to create change within you, your partner, your friends, your organizations, unless and until your emotions are aligned with your logic.
Right.
And there are things that you can do to sort of
Put them together.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Make the right alignment.
So what he says is that for the rider, the first thing you need to do is, so we talk a lot about SMART goals, right? So specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, timely, SMART goals, right? Because what they say is that very often what looks like resistance is actually the lack of clarity. Right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing as telling somebody, in the health context, like, from today onwards I will be healthy. Right? The rider has no idea what healthy means.
Right.
But if you say from today onwards I will have a salad 3 times a week at lunchtime and I will do this for the next 3 months, the rider's like, okay, I got this.
Right. So there's another book which gives it uses the same sort of thought process to explain how you should quit smoking. So it's called Easy Way to Quit Smoking, which is by Alan Carr. And he's not instructing you to stop smoking in the book because it's like, just telling your mind that you need to stop smoking, which is not rational. There's no logic behind it. So you never, you're not inclined to do it. So he's just actually not even brought out, health hazards that are caused due to it, but just what it's doing to your body. So he just explains, what's happening to your vessels or what's happening to your heart, and just giving you information about what you're going through when you're doing this and not asking you to stop, which I think is really amazing because it's giving you all the knowledge you need as to why you shouldn't be doing it, but it's not just directing you that stop doing it, stop doing it.
So it's like basically he's getting you disgusted with yourself because he's
he's actually
all these
saying
things are
that,
going wrong when you smoke a cigarette.
So his simple logic is that, use your mind and you will realize that this is not benefiting me.
Right.
So what I'm the void that I'm feeling is because that cigarette caused that void. That void didn't exist for me. When I was a non-smoker, I didn't need smokes.
Right.
But, now that I'm a smoker, I feel that void because I'm trying to stop something caused by the cigarette. So it's quite relevant to what the book Switch talks
So coming
about.
back to Thrive also, this book also speaks about making one change in one area, and then that focus on that to really and drive that change with an emotion. So the reason I was saying disgust is the only reason I was able to quit smoking or I'm attempting to quit smoking. The only reason I could do it is because every time now I think about a cigarette, I'm disgusted. Like that's the emotion that drives that action. So it'll never happen.
Exactly.
Right. So it's not, for me, it's no longer about wanting to smoke or not wanting to smoke. It's just every time I think about it, I'm disgusted. So that's really something that I've seen can drive real change in yourself. For behavior, right? And then he also says that make the path for change the easiest as possible. So which means that, if you're going to say that you're avoiding sugar, remove all the sugar from your house.
Exactly.
Why are you making yourself susceptible to that temptation, right?
So this goes back to what we were talking about earlier about the whole willpower thing, right? So actually, like what he writes about is like, he's like, it's like willpower is an exhaustible resource, right? So what often looks like laziness is often exhaustion.
Right.
So like people are exhausted. Like how many times will you resist?
Will you say no to yourself? Like to exhaust.
And like it's like telling that rider constantly, do this, and the elephant's like no, I can't.
I can't do this.
I can't
I'm
do
driven
this.
by this emotion, so I have to do this.
Yeah, exactly. And so I mean, the way that he sort of likes to channel the elephant is sort of having their buy-in into whatever change you're trying to make.
Right.
So like one of the ways that he suggests is actually the identity model, right? Now if you think of yourself as like this person who's like a sugar addict,
right?
You're going to be like, oh, I'm a sugar addict, I need that.
Right.
But if you start thinking of yourself as somebody that like, no, this is in line with another identity of mine, which is I'm also a health and fitness freak, right?
Yeah.
And then does a health and fitness freak have sugar? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and that's how you sort of motivate the elephant. as well.
Right. So that's a great tip,
Yeah.
when you're really trying to make changes with yourself to kind of change the way you think about yourself so that you can direct your behavior.
Yeah.
Right. So before we wind up, could you, suggest, say, 2-3 habits which are like, one-time habits, for example, sugar, that you can just sort of get it out of the house and then it's not going to be a part of your daily life. So, any such habits which help you live
Actually,
healthier.
everything.
Get in
Yeah.
dressings from Arugula.
Yes.
So
Healthy
Niharika,
food can be tasty.
where can we find you and Arugula on social media?
So we are at Arugula and Co. So ARUGULAANDCO. And just give us a follow.
On
And-
Instagram?
On Instagram, yeah.
Okay.
And Facebook.
Great.
Yeah.
And a big thank you to all our listeners. You can follow the Open Library Project on LinkedIn, Instagram and Facebook for latest updates on our events, and stay tuned for the next Paperback podcast on IVM Podcasts. Happy reading. You can follow IVM Podcasts on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at IVM Podcasts. Listen to Paperback on the IVM Podcast app, website or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Who said healthy food is boring? Who said raw veggies is just salads? Who said eating fats makes you fat? Look forward to my recommendations on healthy food and exercise hacks on the Kinetic Living podcast with me, Coach Urmi, every Wednesday on the IVM app, website, and anywhere you get your podcast from.
Hi, I'm Vishal Gondal, an entrepreneur. I've had the chance to meet and understand how some of the super achievers have hacked their way to success, and they have done spectacular innovations. Now I take a closer look at these people's lives to find out what lies beneath the force, only on the Vishal Gondal Show. Episodes out fortnightly on Wednesdays on the IVM website, app, or your favorite podcasting platform.